welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us on this fine Wednesday morning. We have today's webinar and the topic is advanced air mobility. What got us here won't get us there. AAM, as a lot of you probably refer to it. My name's Danny Maynard. I'm a new face to AAA. I've got an extensive aviation background and I pretty much head up the aviation section of AAA here. So nice to meet you all in a sense. We will do an acknowledgement of country. First, I do want to remind everyone that this is recorded and you'll be able to get a copy of it on our website if you wish. So the Australian Airport Association acknowledges the traditional owners of country throughout Australia, and here in Canberra where I'm presenting, it's the Ngunnawal country. And we recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and community. We pay our respect to them and their cultures and to elders past, present and emerging. So just a quick overview of what we're presenting today. We're going to look at what AAM looks like for aerodrome operators on day one and what an aerodrome operators need to do and think about to be ready for AAM. And do we need a vertiport? Before we begin, there's a couple of reminders, some housekeeping, if you will. As I said, this session's recorded and will be available on our website. We have the opportunity for questions at the conclusion of Liam's presentation. So please submit any questions you may have throughout this webinar in our chat and we will get to them towards the end. So now I'd like to introduce Liam, who is our presenter and our speaker today. He is AAM Infrastructure Research Specialist at Civil Aviation Safety Authority. Liam's worked in CASA's Future Aerodromes team. They explore the requirements of emerging technology and engage with stakeholders to develop guidance, material and standards for vertiports and other future infrastructure for AAM. Liam's focus has been on AAM and future technology since joining CASA in 2019 in the Future Air Navigation Research and Development Project. Prior to joining CASA, Liam spent 7 years in the airfield operations team at Perth Airport and as an airfield operations airport and then as the airfield works coordinator. So I'd like to firstly thank you, Liam, and hand over to you.
Thanks, Danny. Okay, let's do the share thing. Okay, Danny, you seeing that?
Yes, I am.
Brilliant. Okay, well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this presentation on advanced air mobility. Thank you all for taking the time to join me here this morning, and especially to my West Coast friends who've gotten up early to be here. Thank you very much, and I hope you're enjoying the cooler weather that we're having this morning as opposed to the last few days. I know that Danny has already done an acknowledgement of country for the AAA, so I would also like to do one on behalf of CASA. I'd like to start by respectfully acknowledging the Whadjuk Noongar people, the traditional custodians of the Perth region where I live and work. I acknowledge their continuing connection to the land, water and community, and I pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. I'd like to extend my acknowledgement and respects to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and any other First Nations peoples that are joining us today. My name is Liam Smith, and as per the introduction from Danny, my role here at CASA is that of Advanced Air Mobility Research Specialist. I'm part of the Future Aerodromes team with Joe Hain. Our little team is trying to make sure that as technologies change in the aviation infrastructure space, that Australia is as close to the front of the pack as we can be. Joe and I are working on a number of areas at the moment. The new OLS changes are taking a large part of Joe's focus, along with representing Australia's interests at ICAO's Vertical Flight Infrastructure Working Group, which is laying the foundations for future international standards, recommendations for vertiports. While my focus remains on the next lot of guidance materials and the future regulatory structure for vertiport operations, and also some work on electrification of aviation at existing aerodromes. Today, we will be touching on a few subjects, all in and around what our team is working on. So let's dive in. Aviation is changing. We all know it. You can't scroll through your LinkedIn profile without seeing something new and exciting in aviation being promoted. There is a push towards a carbon-free or net zero aviation industry. And to get there, industry is making the most of some pretty cool advances in technology. On the back of these technologies, we are seeing many companies trying new things, both well-established aeronautical companies like Airbus, Boeing, Embraer, Textron, General Electric, etc., and new startups like Joby, Archer, Evation, Vertical Aerospace, to name just a couple. And they are all working on designing new or retrofitting existing aircraft with new power systems and propulsion systems. Electric motors and battery cells, like the Alice on your screen at the moment. Hydrogen electric / hydrogen fuel cell, and another example on the screen there from Universal Hydrogen. And amongst the traditional aircraft that are making use of new technologies, there is a new aircraft type that is emerging, the VTOL capable aircraft, or VCA. Now, VCA should not be confused with helicopters, as helicopters are not included in the definition of VCA. And yes, VCA, or VTOL capable aircraft, is the term that is being favoured by both EASA and ICAO working groups, not eVTOLs at the moment. They are currently being defined as heavier than air aircraft, other than an airplane or a helicopter, that is capable of vertical procedures by means of more than 2 lift thrust units. And some of these VCAs, they are well on their way to certification, with most of them having an eventual goal of certifying as a fully autonomous passenger carrying aircraft. The industry is moving fast. How fast? For just a moment, I want to highlight how fast things are moving by having a bit of a look at what's changed in the 3 months since I did this original presentation at the AAA National Conference. What was that, November? I actually found it really difficult to filter through all of the AAM news just to put up 6 dot points, because a lot has happened since the end of November. Now, I'm not going to read everything that's on the screen. Feel free to do that yourself. But I do want to highlight one of the significant ones, the announcement by Amperis. The biggest hurdle for electric AAM aircraft is power versus weight. We know that Joby, for example, with their S4, when they provided the information anyway, were using batteries with a specific energy of 280 watt hours per kilogram. That's pretty much what we're seeing in the latest Teslas at the moment, that 280 watt hours per kilogram sort of range. With Amperis producing 500 kilowatt hour batteries, OEMs like Joby can theoretically, for the same battery weight, essentially double their range, which for Joby would push it out to somewhere around 300 plus kilometers. Much better for their commercial opportunities. Now, up until this point in aviation history, aircraft and its required infrastructure have developed generally, for the most part, at the same relatively slow pace. From first flights to passenger carrying to the jet age was about 60 years. And since then, there has not really needed to be a drastic change on how and where we have built aerodromes. Accordingly, aerodrome regulations and standards have also moved forward slowly too. But are the existing aerodrome standards fit the purpose now, or do we do nothing? What we don't want to be doing as regulators is to be tangled up in the because we've always done it that way kind of attitude. We are trying to question everything. One of my CASA colleagues who's working in the emerging technologies team has a status on his team's profile that says, "What got us here won't get us there." This is a great motto that those of us in the Future Aerodromes team and the Emerging Technologies team are trying to keep in mind as we navigate the development of guidance materials for this changing aviation sector. We are questioning every specification that we write, trying hard to make sure that they are uncomplicated, risk-based as much as they possibly can be, and importantly, flexible enough for a rapidly evolving industry. Although early entry VCA will have some similarity to helicopters and use similar infrastructure, things will change as the AAM ecosystem matures. This new ecosystem that we are seeing emerge is proposing a new form of aerodrome infrastructure. That's quite a change from traditional airports. Vertiports. Now, vertiports will be akin to a heliport, but likely designed to cater for a higher throughput of passengers. They'll have multiple parking areas for vertical takeoff and landing capable aircraft. And they'll probably be built in much higher numbers and in places where a noisy heliport would not be permitted by the general public or shire councils. The Australian Association for Uncrewed Systems, AAUS, and LEK Consulting, in their presentation to the Advanced Air Mobility Summit in September, projected that advanced air mobility is expected to launch here in Australia in 2027. So this begs a few questions. In a little more than 3 years, are we expecting an influx of hundreds of VCA aircraft, as well as electric, hybrid electric, or hydrogen GA and commuter aircraft? Are we going to need dozens of new vertiports around every city and regional town? Are airports going to have to build new facilities to accommodate these new aircraft types? And importantly, will you be able to facilitate these novel aircraft types within the current MOS 139 rule set? Let's explore some of these questions. First question, I guess, is what is advanced air mobility? Contrary to the way we sometimes hear it in the media, AAM is not another name for electric VTOL capable aircraft, nor is it Uber-style air taxis hopping between building top vertiports. AAM is an ecosystem. It is an ecosystem that envisages the use of new technologies and new aircraft designs to revolutionize both urban and regional air transportation. Yes, rooftop air taxi services with VCAs are likely to be an element of AAM eventually, but so are regional services with electric or hybrid, conventional or short takeoff and landing capable aircraft. This could potentially open up regional pair opportunities that would be unprofitable with conventionally powered aircraft. Medical transport services are another existing services that will be a future element of advanced air mobility. The VX4 that is pictured is being considered by Babcock in the UK for possible EMS use. RPAS services like last mile deliveries or infrastructure inspections are another part of advanced air mobility. Importantly, though, advanced air mobility is also the supporting technologies that are in development as well. New infrastructure like vertiports, maybe even stall ports down the track too. But also the development of new systems like UTM or unmanned aircraft system traffic management. That's why we call it UTM. Digital aeronautical data management systems, detect and avoid, LiDAR, radar systems, advanced vision systems, and eventually autonomous flight. Now, I know that there are plenty of naysayers out there that say none of this is going to take off, pun intended. However, the market report from CMI, for example, in July last year, put the advanced air mobility industry at a value of $8.2 billion. That was for 2023. And expected $14.1 billion. Sorry, hang on, I might have that around the wrong way. $8.2 billion in 2022, $14.1 billion last year. And with an estimated compound annual growth rate of 35%, they've forecast that the AAM industry is expected to have a market value of about 68 billion by 2032. There are some analysts that think those figures are actually too low. For a little bit of perspective, only a year before that, the outlook was for only a $45 billion market by 2030 and a CAGR of only 22%. So the estimates are getting better and better. These market analysts seem to think that advanced air mobility is a pretty solid bet. There are some YouTubers out there that have even said that some of these eVTOL OEMs may even be the next Tesla for their shareholders. Good luck to them. And I know that my emerging technology colleagues and I are kind of hedging our careers on this, so kind of hoping it'll work out. So what might the first years of advanced air mobility look like for Australia? Well, we are fairly sure that we aren't going to see hundreds of air taxis buzzing around our city centres. In fact, in most parts of the country, you'll only know that the first VCA has begun operating if you're keeping tabs on your social media. Here in Australia, it is going to be a gradual uptake. We all realise that. And it'll most likely start with the replacing of a few existing services with VTOL-capable aircraft. According to publicly available data, there are already a number of operators that have announced between them a total of 150 non-firm orders with Eve Air Mobility for their Eve aircraft. These being Helispirit, Aviair, Microflight, Sydney Seaplanes, and Nautilus Aviation. Given what their current operations look like and Eve's proposed performance, we can take a bit of a guess at what services they possibly will be looking at. Things like ecotourism, scenic flights, and airport city transfers are probably pretty high up on the list. Eve expects entry into service of their aircraft sometime around 2026, but having total orders somewhere close to 3,000 aircraft, it could be some time after that that we see first deliveries here in Australia. Wisk, who is a fully owned subsidiary of Boeing, is another OEM that is looking to operate in Australia. But unlike Eve, they are planning on having a vertical integration model and plan to operate their own aircraft. Wisk have been in talks with the South Queensland Council of Mayors, and there is hope that these discussions will lead to AAM operations being demonstrated at the 2032 Brisbane Olympics. V-Star in South Australia have announced a partnership with Dufour and XTI and could be another early entrant into the Australian AAM industry. They are looking at the Aero 2, which is the tilt wing RPAS at the front of the picture there. The Aero 3 tilt wing hybrid electric aircraft VCA, which is at the back of that little formation. and eventually the XTI Trifan 600 at the top of the formation there. They are also planning on bringing in Leonardo 609s as well, but they are actually defined as a rotorcraft and not a VCA, so I'm not going to talk about them. But there are more than 400 companies with eVTOL designs or concepts out there. And SMG, AAM Reality Index, is tracking the 28 most real of them. The QR code on the screen, if you haven't been to the SMG AAM Reality Index, will get you there. So I'll sit here for just a second while you get your phone out if you want to take a snapshot of that QR code. So yeah, hopefully over the next few years, other Australian aircraft operators will be reaching out to OEMs to look at supplementing or replacing their fleets. Some of the operators that I have mentioned have existing facilities that they operate to. Some of those facilities are based at aerodromes, maybe even your own. Hopefully, these operators are already in the process of assessing the suitability of these facilities for VCA operations, having discussions with facility operators about the potential that these VCAs may impose the need for alterations to accommodate them. I'll give you a quick example of what I mean. Currently, Microflight operates to the twin helipads on the river at Batman Park in the Melbourne CBD. They operate the EC-120, EC-130, and the AS-350 and 355 helicopters. And they touch down on a pad that consists of a tee-off, touchdown liftoff area, which is less than 10 meters wide. As per the current guidance for heliports, there is no requirement for a solid FATO, which is the surrounding area of the touchdown liftoff area that is used where there is a requirement for a rejected takeoff. However, at this stage, we don't have any flight performance data from the OEMs. That data is what we would need to be able to understand the rejected takeoff requirements for VCAs or the continued safe flight characteristics following a failure. As such, the initial guidance for vertiports specifies that you need to have a solid FATO. Based on our initial guidance in AC 139.V-01, to be able to accommodate the EVE VCA, these helipads next to Batman Park will need to be redesigned to have a solid FATO of 1.5 times the D value of the EVE aircraft. Since the AAA National Conference, EVE Air Mobility actually have advised publicly that the D value for their initial production aircraft will be just a touch under 15 meters. So that would require a FATO of about 22.5 meters diameter. And that is a significant upgrade for this location. Now, I know I saw Clem somewhere in the group there somewhere, and I know what he's thinking. The decision on solid FATOs, and this will probably end up being a question at the end, the decision on solid FATOs is not fixed. Joe and I will keep our minds and thoughts open to what that will eventually look like as we get more performance data from the OEMs. And we are starting to get some of that through the FAA, we hear, but we haven't seen it in our email inbox yet. So at the moment, solid FATOs, keep your eyes peeled for what comes in the future, because we don't know. Okay, let's say that you've had an OEM approach you, or perhaps you've approached them, and they want to start operating a VCA at your airport. For the sake of simplicity, let's assume that the aircraft is a battery-powered, VTOL-capable aircraft, such as the EVE or Wisk's Gen 6 aircraft. I guess the first question should be, do you need to build a vertiport for your aerodrome? Well, no, certainly not. Building any vertiport-specific facilities is going to be an operational and financial decision for each and every aerodrome. But just because you don't have a vertiport, that will not exclude you from accommodating VCAs or being part of the advanced air mobility ecosystem. Let's start this brainstorm off with how you might want advanced air mobility to integrate with your existing operations. And importantly, how they're going to interact with your airspace and your movement areas. Some of these AAM aircraft will include, like we said previously, electric conversions of STOL, conventional, and STOL, short takeoff and landing aircraft. So they will be perfectly capable of a conventional or short takeoff and landing on your existing runways using your existing procedures. But what about VTOL capable aircraft? Well, some of your options may be to have them approach in your normal pattern to a hover or to a touchdown at a runway taxiway intersection, or to air taxi from the runway to a parking position, just like you may do with a helicopter today. Or perhaps it may be preferable for you to have them approach from a direction that deconflicts them from your runway traffic to a designated FATO, for example, that is away from your runway. A quick point to clarify here, if you already have helicopter facilities, such as this FATO at Bankstown, and those facilities satisfy the physical and flight performance requirements of a particular VCA, such as the rejected takeoff distance required, and you've conducted a risk assessment against things like downwash and outwash, for example, then there is nothing under the current rule set that stops VCAs from operating to those facilities. You will also need to be collaborating with air services or your procedure designers, your existing aerodrome users, and the new VCA operators to figure out your airspace integration considerations. Will the flight performance of the VCA or how it is operated actually fit in with your aerodrome operations? Maybe it'll be possible that with expected lower noise profiles of VCAs, airspace or flight paths that were previously restricted due to noise concerns might once again become viable. If you're thinking of putting in a new FATO, you will need to design an OLS for it and integrate it with your existing OLS. The initial Vertiport AC has the design elements for Vertiport OLS. We deliberately tried to make the design of the OLS simpler. We've done away with the complex calculations and tables. So you work out your OLS surface origins first, and a bit like a Lego set, you add the required surfaces of the OLS based on the flight profile of your most demanding VCA. If you have 3 approach and departure flight paths to your FATO, then you build each OLS Lego set from the FATO up. If you want the full OLS explanation, because it'll take most of the time we've got to do that, we do still have our initial consultation webinars available on the CASA YouTube page, and you can find Dan Parsons' webinar on the OLS there. Next question for you. Do you want to have your vertiport facilities airside or landside as a separate facility? There is an important point to note here. If you are a certified aerodrome and wish to use the guidance in AC 139V-01 vertiport design, for any facilities within the area covered by your certificate, then you may need to request an approval from CASA to use that guidance in AC 139V. This is because the Part 139 of the CASARs do not recognise advisory circulars as legislative instrument, and the standards in MOS 139 currently has no reference to anything vertiport yet. The Vertiport Design and Operations Technical Working Group is working on the options for what certification could potentially look like for vertiports. But this is still very much in its early stages of discussion, and we still have a lot of questions for us to answer before we are able to share any of that externally. But we are working on it. For some, the option for a landside facility will simplify the need to worry about those approvals, and it may have other benefits. Maybe being landside is the best solution for your airspace integration considerations. Perhaps you have land available or a huge car park that doesn't get used anymore, that already has facilities for a bus stop, or perhaps some of you from major airports have a multi-story car park drawn up in your master plan that would probably look pretty awesome with a vertiport on its roof. Security screening requirements for landside facilities may also be less of a burden. Okay, so we've had a good think about where we may be able to accommodate our VCA operations, landing and taking off. But now we've got a battery-powered aircraft sitting on your apron that needs to charge before it can turn around. Now, for full disclosure, I am no expert on charging infrastructure, so I did reach out to the team at electro.aero for the latest information in this area for the presentation. And I'd like to thank Richie for his assistance in this. However, the use of their information and its images is not intended to be interpreted as any form of CASA endorsement. Thank you. Okay, got that other way. Now, the issue of aircraft charging isn't going to be specific to VCA. There are plenty of new battery-powered aircraft and battery conversion projects going on in all sectors of aviation, from light sport to commuter aircraft. And unlike VCAs, they aren't going to be waiting till 2027. Some of them are here now. For example, Fly On E, who are partnered with Electro Aero, have been operating the Alpha Electro out of Jandakot since March 2022 and have been doing flight training and experience flights in them. So let's cover quickly 3 points on electrical infrastructure. Number one, you don't need to get a grid upgrade to be able to provide chargers for your aerodrome. Now, if you are planning on being a high throughput vertiport in the future, then it may need to be a consideration. But otherwise, there are drop-in solutions that use a battery bank for energy storage that will enable rapid charging ability of the aircraft that are going to need it. Electro Aero have been using their own system with power supplied by solar panels on their hangar, independent of the grid at Jandakot for over a year. This system has aviation chargers on one side and EV chargers on the other land side, enabling the excess energy to be used to charge their staff's personal EVs. Number two, there is an aviation standard being developed through SAI International for electric aircraft charging. This is an electric aviation specific implementation of the physical charging hardware, and with many, though not all, of the OEMs planning on implementing this AS6968. This should mean that aircraft all over the world can use the same infrastructure. So any concerns about buying the wrong plug should be negated. These plugs can be brought out to the aircraft on a mobile spool, or they can even be integrated into the apron. And lastly, electric aircraft batteries will be very safe. The same SAI committee is releasing the ARP 7131 pretty soon. This is a recommended practice that will provide ways for OEMs to verify thermal runaway containment at the cell, the module, and the pack level. Be able to document it, and from there, provide that evidence to regulators as part of their certification process. However, your local emergency responders will still need to be consulted, They will need to have appropriate systems and procedures in place for responding to and suppressing battery fires. But these procedures should have little difference than to those that they probably already have for fire involving battery-powered GSE or buses, for example, that are currently in use at many airports. There are, of course, far too many vertiport infrastructure considerations for me to cover in just this very short webinar. In fact, in 2022, NASA put together a little brainstorming workshop, and in just 2 hours, that work group had compiled a list of 445 different vertiport considerations. See if you can read them all on the screen. If you want to review those considerations, and I do suggest that you do that, they are easy to find just by Googling vertiport considerations. And you will find both the NASA paper and also a civil aviation publication, CAP 2538, from the UK CAA. Both are really good documents to show you the full scope of the considerations that you may need to consider if you're considering either a vertiport or advanced air mobility at your aerodrome. Okay, so what I kind of hope that you've gotten out of today is some of the initial pieces of this larger advanced air mobility puzzle that can kickstart your conversations about how advanced air mobility could play a role at your airport in the near, short, and long terms. And that concludes my prepared presentation for this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Liam. That was fantastic. Very interesting from my point of view, as it's a topic that's new to me, but yeah, really interesting. So we've got a Q&A side here. If you could type in your questions, I'll be able to read it out. We've got far too many people for me to monitor the mute and unmute section. But I saw some hands up. So if you could pop your question in the Q&A, I'll read it out and Liam can answer it.
Or try to at least.
Yeah, give it a good go.
I still haven't had a cup of tea this morning, so we'll see how we go.
You're doing well for this hour of the morning for you. I would not be functioning to the level you are, I can tell you. Just give it a minute for any questions.
Surely someone, I haven't covered everything AAM.
So we've got one from Tori Murray. What would be the time frame for certification of these aircraft in Australia?
Okay, I am not part of that team at CASA that is looking at the certification of aircraft. What I can tell you is that there are a number of OEMs that are very much on their way to certification, both in Europe and with the FAA, and we have reciprocal arrangements with them. What the time frame will be from FAA certification to our certification process, I don't know. That's a question you need to ask our other team.
Fantastic.
But don't expect them this year.
Is there a way they can reach the other team that you referenced there, Liam, or just the email down below? It can be forwarded on.
Yeah,
or?
yep, absolutely. Get in touch with us at vertiports.casa.gov.au, and we can pass any of your questions on to the relevant teams. We have quite a few people working on different areas of advanced air mobility.
Fantastic, thank you. I've got another one. Liam mentioned that there's an estimated launch in 2027. What was the forum or paper that this came from, the year?
So that was at the Advanced Air Mobility Summit that was held in Melbourne in September. And that was part of the presentation from the AAUS and LEK Consulting. So that's their prediction, which is why I credited them with that prediction. Hey, I'm hopeful it's 2027. I want to see these things buzzing around, though I don't think they'll be in Perth anytime soon.
Fantastic. Another question, do you think any meaningful AAM service will be shown at the Paris Olympics this year? How are EASA handling this, and will they be sharing any lessons learnt?
We were hopeful that Volocopter would be operating their aircraft at the Olympics. There has been a little bit of media attention on this, some of it quite negative. So we're not sure if that'll actually take place. We are hopeful it will. And we're also not sure of how far along Volocopter is in their certification of the Volo City. So those are the things that are going to be critical in that question. Will they get certification in time, and will they get permission to do so? Fingers crossed, because it'll be pretty cool to see that, and it'll be a pretty good jump for the AAM industry. But yeah, keep your eyes on the media to see what the continuing story for that is.
Fantastic. And we've got a two-part question, one on community noise considerations, and secondly, private use, the non-vertiport airspace issues.
Yeah, both good points. The noise considerations is actually outside of CASA's purview. We are aviation safety, not aviation noise. However, the department has got an advanced air mobility consultative committee that is meeting regularly. We are part of that. And noise is obviously a major consideration of that. Whether that makes changes to any regulations in other areas, we won't know yet. Private use VCAs, there are a number of aircraft that are promoting their aircraft as a private use aircraft. Whether that comes in under a light sports sort of category, we don't know yet. Like I said, this is moving fast, and we are trying our best to be a fast follower with all this that's going on. What I can tell you is that those aircraft are not close to certification as far as I am aware. So maybe in the future, we might see some personal AAM aircraft, VCAs or conventional aircraft, but we don't know what that's going to look like yet. And the airspace is a big question.
Indeed.
And not mine to figure out.
Another one is good presentation. Excuse me. Good presentation. So thank you. Currently, drones can be operated outside of designated ports. What is the cutoff between a drone and an unmanned vehicle that requires a vertiport?
You tell me.
Yeah.
So we are working exceptionally close with the emerging technologies team, the RPAS team, and the certifications team to define where that cutoff is, because you're right. We are getting bigger and bigger drones, and these VCAs are also being promoted for unmanned cargo as well, which is a giant wing delivery aircraft. Where that line blurs between 101 and Part 91 and Part 121, we are still working on. That's a question that everyone, not just us, ICAO, the FAA, EASA, are trying to figure out, because it's a difficult one.
Mm-hmm. A very long one from Tim. So apologies, Tim. I'll have to cut it in half. But he states, I'm excited about developments in electric aviation and welcome the proactive approach to looking at future infrastructure requirements. Is there any discussion within CASA as to how they will address aircraft certification, or are they looking at foreign regulators to take the lead?
We are. There are companies in Australia that are designing their own VCAs, and we are working with them on the certification. I don't know how far along that is or where in the process that is. The majority, though, of the eVTOLs, the conventional electric aircraft, the hybrid aircraft, the hydrogen aircraft, most of them are in Europe and the US by a vast majority. That's why they're working with the FAA and EASA for their certification and not us.
Another one, I've heard some news on Dubai introducing them soon as maybe a taxi service. Was wondering if you knew more on this.
Yeah, absolutely. That was one of the points that was on my "How fast are we moving?" slide. That was it last week? I think it was last week that Skyports announced that that deal had actually been signed as an order from someone up high. I can't remember exactly who it was. To make it not just an agreement, but to start moving that process along for multiple vertiports, Joby S4s to facilitate that vertiport network. So that'll be really exciting. I need to make a holiday to there once that's all up and going.
Oh, any excuse will do to go over there, hey?
I know, right? We can go visit Sam.
Yeah. So given that many of these aircraft have 6 to 9 engines operating at very high revolutions, has a study been undertaken as to what impacts this will have in relation to aircraft noise in CBD areas in communities that are really noise sensitive?
Absolutely. Have I seen the data? No. The FAA is working with those OEMs that are certifying, and part of their requirement is that they demonstrate their noise profiles, and they're doing that at the moment. We know that they've done it with Joby, and we know that they've done it with Archer on the Midnight very recently. I presume that the other two, who I think I know, but I won't say, will probably be also well on the way of doing that noise profile assessment. FAA have said that they will share that with the other regulators around the world as part of Joe's working group at ICAO. So once we get that information, we'll be able to assess that and present it to groups like the AAM Consultative Committee so that we can put that information in and hopefully get some understanding of what noise really does look like for these aircraft.
Fantastic. You're doing well. We've got 2 more questions, and we'll let you have a coffee. Is CASA looking at how airspace in metro areas will need to be reconfigured or revised to accommodate the forecast increase in VCAs?
Absolutely. In fact, he sits behind me. My good friend Nathan is working hard as part of the standards branch on what UTM will look like. Poor guy has got a lot of work on his shoulders because it is a very difficult proposition of we don't want to segregate. That's not what the future is going to have to look like. But how does integration of advanced air mobility, RPAS systems, and our current aviation infrastructure all fit together? It's a tough one. He's working hard on it. Believe you me.
I bet. How is it envisaged that the first aircraft that will come into service, i.e. RPT charter, as this will impact landside or airside consideration for future infrastructure planning?
I don't think the first few aircraft is going to be a big change. We're already seeing electric aircraft like the Alpha Electros down here at Jandakot, but they're already charging aircraft. They know how to do that. They've got the systems in place there. The difference is that instead of charging a conventional aircraft, you're charging a VCA, and it'll just fit into one of the helicopter slots, perhaps for the aircraft companies that are bringing them in and do scenic flights. That's what we're going to see first, we think. So that first aircraft, it'll be an easy change. Once we start looking at things like intercity, inter-airport transfers, regional pairs, then those considerations for future infrastructure start growing.
Fantastic. And another one has just sneaked in there. It's a goodie, so I want to read it. How has AI been integrated into AAM technology and operations?
I don't know enough about AI. There are, I think, 4 levels of automation. And artificial intelligence is like the very, very, very end goal. Whether or not aircraft end up having AI is questionable. Autonomy, yes. Autonomous, yes. Artificial intelligence, we don't think so at this stage. a really good company to watch. I don't know if you saw the Cessna Caravan in the presentation. A company called X-Wing. Yes, I'm a Star Wars nerd, so I love it for that. But they are currently flying fully autonomous. No, sorry, not fully autonomous. High autonomy aircraft. So they're not fully autonomous. They do still have someone out of the loop. These terms are great to Google and find out what they all mean. Out of the loop in a control room at an airport. But it is not AI yet. What AI? Maybe. Don't think so. Anytime soon. But autonomous, yes.
Okay, we've got one. Does CASA see a benefit in test ecosystems as a facilitator for early adoption and development? For example, participating airports and OEM operators and test vertiport locations. Is this being considered?
I will take that one on notice because that is a policy question and not a vertiport team question. Sorry, Daniel.
Yep. No, that's fine. We've got a way of recording these questions, so we can certainly get back to Daniel on that one. We can share it around. I think there's one more in the chat. When do you think more autonomous aircraft operations, auto land and auto takeoff modules, may start to happen in the commercial fleets and be certified as safe for operational rollout? And will that be the first step towards a more autonomous airspace and UTM?
Cool question.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Yeah, it is. But that's not my area of expertise as to when or how or whether it gets certified.
Yeah.
Whether it is coming into industry, it is being tested. There are companies that are doing autonomous flight. There are Garmin's working on autoland systems, emergency autoland systems. They are being tested. What that looks like for certification, whether it gets certified, how it gets integrated into commercial fleets, and when. I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that.
No, that's totally fine. I think we'll leave it there. You're probably exhausted, so we thank you very much for your time today, and it was fascinating. Just want to remind everyone that this recording is available on the AAA's website. We also have upcoming events, so download our 2024's calendar. We've got an upcoming state division meeting, so revert to those dates that are coming up here right now on your screen. OpSwap Forum, registrations are now open. There are limited spaces available at some of the networking functions and tours, so book in early to avoid disappointment. Retail and Commercial Forum, registrations will open shortly. And then the National Conference and Industry Expo, which is fantastic, you all probably know. We're now accepting speaker nominations, so please, if you have a keynote or a panel presentation that you would like to inspire and educate our airport community, we would love to hear from you. Finally, thank you very much for attending. Thank you very much. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.